Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. Jared here with another video review from Fanboys Forever. Today we're going to be having a look at the brand new Four Horsemen Studios Masque of the Red Death figure. This is from their Figura, Obscura line, a line where the Horsemen explore the world of mythology and holidays and just all sorts of random things and put it all into one line. Of course, the Masque of the Red Death is based on the classic 1800 short story by Edgar Allan Poe. In this story, there's a rich young ruler who decides that he's going to throw a big party while everybody outside is dying from a mysterious plague known as the Red Death, which kills you in about 30 minutes flat. He believes that with all of his wealth and food and supplies that he'll be protected from this horrible disease, but as the night falls, a mysterious visitor appears inside that no one seems to remember, dressed in a garish Red Death costume. And then from there, well, let's just say it doesn't go well for the partygoers. Of course, I've always been endlessly fascinated by Poe, but I have a real soft spot for the Figura Obscura line, most of which I've reviewed right here on the channel. So I am really looking forward to taking a look at this really interesting looking set. But before we begin, don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to Fanboys Forever, we would really appreciate it, and a like is also always appreciated if you feel we deserve it. We just recently made it to 5,000 subscribers, and I want to thank everyone, from the people who have just subscribed to those that have been around for the last, well, over 10 years. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And of course, as we continue to celebrate the Halloween season, it's really great that the Horsemen have timed out this release to come out when it did, because sure enough, it has come out at the perfect time for enjoyers of all things macabre to get a hold of this guy just in time for Halloween. So let's go ahead and talk about what you get exactly. This is sort of different than what we've seen before because it is focused on some diorama pieces. For one, by panning up just a little bit, you can see all of the giant clock. Now, this was an integral part of the original short story because this unsettling clock kind of made all the partygoers feel this sense of dread and unease, and we'll get into all the details about that a little bit later. You also get this really cool kind of blood trail base, which I could see people using for all sorts of things, not just this figure. You know, one area that Figura Obscura always goes all out with is their packaging, because it's some really nice collector-friendly packaging. Let me show you how my diorama is built back here. Basically, I'm using 3 components, actually, of that packaging to build it. One of the components was this insert back here that actually goes in the box, and I really like it because it's very accurate to the story, how the final chamber where a lot of the action happens is this big black chamber with these red tinted windows. And there's even blood on the floor, so you can really utilize this for some great photography of the figure. Although my studio lights are kind of washing it out a little bit, this is the incredible artwork that's featured on the front right here. And I just think that is terrific. And then on the side, you can see more of the artwork from the story itself. And then on the back, we have a great summary of the actual literary story. And on the side, we have some of the windows. Now you can open it up, and that's sealed with a magnet. And you can see the inner box with that insert that I shown you earlier, where it says the Masque of the Red Death. And the cool part is the back of it is magnetized as well, and don't forget the Four Horsemen's cool logo at the top there. And check it out. You get a whole diorama of the insane partygoers, and I believe what would be considered to be Prince Prospero right there at the front, trying to figure out who the mysterious Masque of the Red Death partygoer is. And I'm using this in the back of my display throughout the video. And then of course, this is the full-on picture of the Red Death from the front once it's unfolded. Oh, and here's a secret image on the spine right here, and I think that's really cool looking with the candelabra. To the left of this main display thing, you'll see that I actually have this propped up. So you can get some really cool stuff just using the box components that they give you. Aside from all the usual really cool Figura Obscura packaging, we also get this really nice little booklet. And this is really interesting. Of course, the story is in the public domain, so it's allowed to be reprinted by whoever. And you can see that as we go through, it is partially illustrated. So I really thought this was neat. They utilized the artwork that was on the packaging in different spots and for promotional pieces. And of course, the Red Death himself. At the end, you also get some really nice biographical information about Poe, as well as Four Horsemen Studios. So if you've never read this really fantastic short story, I highly suggest you do, and this would be a perfect place to do it. Quick little note, you can see that mine is not in exactly perfect condition because it's not packaged inside the box itself. It's kind of under it in the shipping box. So, you know, good luck. Hopefully yours turns out okay. I'm totally fine with this. This is just like a little freebie you get. So, and that leads us to the main event himself, and that is the Masque of the Red Death. Really fascinating on first glance, and I really wasn't sure exactly what to make of the figure the first time that they shown it just a couple short weeks ago. It's pretty much a completely soft goods dressed figure with very little, just the body itself being the hard plastic. Of course, the Horsemen are kind of experimenting in this line a little bit, it seems, with more and more implementation of soft goods and kind of mixing those things together, almost in the way that you would see Masque do it for their 1/12 collective line. And this is the first figure in the line out of the ones that we've gotten in Figura Obscura, which I would say is probably a pretty comparable counterpart in terms of execution, because you've got a completely soft goods costume and then the hard plastic figure itself, which is pretty much exactly what you would get and in the same scale as Masque figures. And just so that we firmly establish scale so that you understand what you're getting, you can see that on his base it boosts him up a little bit more in the hood, of course, but this is pretty much a 6-inch scaled figure. And then, of course, we have the head sculpt itself, which is by far the most striking part and the most important part of this whole package. You can see that there is just so much going on with this incredibly ornate mask, kind of like, you know, a masquerade ballroom type of thing, because it has the ornate features. It has the kind of drips of blood out from the side, and I'll remove the hood. And just to show you, it is sewn there to the side, so you kind of just scoot it back, I guess. And so with the head sculpt being so absolutely just iconic looking, and there's almost like an element of ironworks to it. It's really interesting. I just think that this was a great design, and I really love what the Horsemen cooked up here. But I do want to show you something. In the story, if you've not read it, spoiler alert for a story that's 200 years old pretty much. When everybody dives for the Red Death at the end to try to stop him after he kills Prospero, the wealthy ruler, well, they unmask him only to find that there's nothing under it. And I was shocked that this was a feature of the figure, because I really didn't know that this would be a thing. I think that this is disgusting. It's incredible. It's gory in a funny way, but this is just so intricate. You can see the bottom of the mouth and the teeth, but then there just being a hollowed out skull, just completely rotted out. And then you can see the inside of this mask. If you put the hood over it, it adds even more of that mysterious kind of feel to it. It's just truly something nightmarish, and I think that it was mission accomplished for what they were going for. You can see that there's just a couple little holes on the sides of the head. There's a couple little pegs there, so we can just kind of easily slide that right back over. This is probably their thinnest type of body, like a zombie-esque body, where you can see it's kind of bony and things underneath the robes. I don't plan on undressing the whole thing because it would just be too difficult to get it all back together. But you can see that it does have like the red loincloth and the kind of gnarly legs and the monster feet. So it's very zombie-esque. With the red hood and everything, for us 80s Toys fans, you can almost get sort of a Mum-Ra vibe from it. I also like how even at this small scale, they were able to get the hood to actually have a little point in the back and to look natural. I imagine that is really difficult to do, and I've seen that absolutely go wrong on a lot of figures in the scale that have tried to utilize soft goods. So good on them that they were actually able to make that work. Of course, when it comes to articulation, the costume isn't going to inhibit anything. All the joints are very tight, and they feel really good, with the arm being able to go above 90 degrees. And then when you put it back down, you can get it to go all the way around. And you can see that there is a rotation at the elbow, and there's hinges on all the hands, and we'll be looking at the alternate hands a little later. There is some diaphragm articulation in there, so you can get him kind of leaning back to laugh at these poor fools. You can also get the legs to go up, and you're not going to have any difficulty. If you want him to ride in the Batmobile or something, he totally can, because he can set no problem. I can feel hip swivel in there. There's also some really nice single jointed knees, rotation at the lower leg, and of course down at the ankle we have a terrific hinge, and we also have some excellent rocker ankle pivot. You can get the legs way out, so you can see that he can hit those wide poses pretty easily, and it's not really much of a problem. You know, looking at the soft good robes themselves, I originally was a little skeptical about the design of this figure, because I thought, okay, so I kind of need some sculpting or some ornamentation on it to make it work for me, because that's kind of been the identity so far of a lot of these Figura Obscura releases. But once I had it in hand and I worked with it myself, I realized it really didn't need that. They did succeed in just making the soft goods work, even though usually we have a lot of those soft goods tempered by a lot of plastic pieces and things and overlays. Here, I think that this is exactly what they were going for. And when you think about the Masque of the Red Death, he's always been envisioned as kind of a flowy robes kind of character, mysterious. It does work very well. And you know, they keep pushing the level of quality on their soft goods, because I really think that this is some heavy duty, really nicely stitched together fabric, kind of double layered in a lot of spots. It feels really nice to handle. Nothing feels flimsy at all. Everything is has kind of a thickness to it. And I believe that a lot of it has posing wire in it, but it must be very, very thin, because I can do this and it will actually stay. But there's other parts at the very tips here. You don't feel it as much, but I think that's because it's not on the outside, but it is on the inside stitch. So you can see that you can work with that part, but just not the outside. Same as over here, where I can kind of work with that and have those flowing. It's not crazy or anything. You can't exactly defy gravity maybe as much as you may want to. Still is, you know, kind of thin wire. And that's good, because when they break out that like really bulky wire, I think that it makes the soft goods look pretty bad. And you also have to accommodate a larger stitch for those and a bigger seam. So I really do think that this was probably the right compromise. So we've seen a lot of the front, but we've not seen much of the back. I think they did a really good job making sure that the robes held up to scrutiny, even from a rear view. There's these great stitches that they did, and I have to raise this up to show you on this like toga type of area, where it kind of goes in a cascade all the way down. This is not usually the type of thing that you would see in a figure this scale. You just don't. And I'm fascinated by it, just seeing that design as it works its way around. And then I also really like what they did down here. The only problem that I have is that this that's supposed to trail behind comes forward a lot when I'm trying to pose. So it's just a matter of shifting it back and making sure that that is dragging along behind him as it is intended to, I believe. I just like the aesthetic that they went for with these flowing robes. He seems ancient. It's just an elegant kind of design. I didn't mention it before, but even his back scarf or sash here has opposing wire in both sides, actually. So you are able to kind of give it a little bit of a suggestion of flowiness. I also like how far the head can jut out, because you see the neck is posed out like as far as it can go on this thing, almost like he's hunched forward. I like how the head is almost like coming out of the hood like that. Now, of course, you can adjust that. You can fix it up to where the hood is more on him. But I also like the magic of him being so gnarled and kind of just the embodiment of this plague that's sweeping the countryside. So let's look at the accessories that he includes. There are quite a number of alternative hands right here. And of course we won't spend too long on these, but just to show you, we have a holding hand for his right hand that's red. We have another holding hand for his right hand. And then we have more of a clenching hand here. Then with his left hand, we have the same kind of deal where there's two holding hands like this. And then there is a clenching hand again, which I really like. And he comes loaded out with his two open hands, which I kind of think that that suits the character, as he's like flowy and spirit-like. Now, he also comes with this dagger, which I think is really interesting. I would almost say that this could be like Prince Prospero's dagger as he's trying to kill him, and of course fails miserably. Here he is with it installed. I do think it's worth pointing out that this has a hinge that goes up and down and allows you to get those stabbies. And the figure looks really threatening with it, almost as if to say that this knife is the transmission point for this Red Death plague. It's creepy, man. So I definitely want to talk a little bit about this cool base. This is sprayed with a glossy coat to make it look like freshly spilled blood right here on this base. So it's definitely a very dark kind of thing. And it's very effective. I was starting to see this in photography from people who'd got it before me. And I just thought, wow, you could really use this in a lot of ways for any kind of horror scene because, you know, it looks convincing here as liquid. And especially then when you put it on the ground, all you got to do is just throw a character on there and boom, it looks like they've been a victim. So I'm going to take poor old Doc Brown here with his surprised face. Oh my, poor Doc Brown. He never saw it coming. But you see the potential for this. You know, you can have any kind of character look like they've been dragged or they're bleeding or whatever. And it really adds another layer, I think. Not only that, but you can see at the bottom that there's all these little pegs. And of course, you can peg him at the end over here. And just bringing the camera back a little bit to show you the effect and how it works. However, these up here almost seem to be a little thinner because they don't lock in to his feet at all. So interestingly, the first time I filmed this review, some of these pegs were just a mystery to me, especially because they were two different sizes. But eventually, thanks to a commenter, I was able to find out that yes, I'm supposed to be putting the giant clock in these. I don't know why I didn't think of it or why that seemed like such a distant possibility to me at the time, but I just didn't realize it. And here we are. The clock actually just pegs in to the end of the pool of blood, and it looks really cool like that. Of course, that means you can get some really nice shots of the figure standing over the blood with the clock. Anyone who's read the original short story knows the thematic importance that's behind this clock, that we have this kind of ornate piece down here that is an upside down like demon's head. You can see his beard up there and his horns down there. So this is already kind of, you know, foreboding that something is going to go wrong in this room. Moving on up to the inner workings of the clock, we have a transparent piece of plastic to simulate glass, and you can see the chimes and the chains and all of that below. And then up to the top, we have this beautifully detailed ornate clock face right here. It's just incredible looking. And I especially like the addition of the raven on the top, which is a piece you do have to plug in. So if you do want this to be less ornate, you can easily just unplug it from the top to make it look a little more ordinary if that's what your display requires. I also have to believe that this is an intentional homage to Poe, of course, with the raven. Now you can see that we can actually open it, and you can see the inner workings a little bit. And on the inside, it just gives you access to where you can actually touch the different weights and things. I'm not really sure necessarily what purpose it serves practically, but you can definitely do that, and it's just pegged in there. Maybe mine wasn't glued in as well as it should have been or something. I don't know. At first, I thought, hey, maybe I can move the hand, but I quickly realized that I think that's there to stay. I especially like the little detail that you can see the Masque of the Red Death back there in the gears of the clock. This is going to look great with figures that are not only 6-inch scale, but even 7-inch scale figures. You'd be hard-pressed to notice anything was off about the scale whatsoever. So this is going to be a fantastic diorama piece for all the people like me who love to collect those kinds of things and add them to the display. Chances are you're going to see this pop up in the background of a lot of my videos this season. Even just tilting the figure slightly kind of gives you a sense of unease, I think. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of some comparisons in terms of scale. This is Doc Nocturnal, and he is in his red. This guy's definitely bigger, but Doc Nocturnal is built on that small buck body that they utilize for Spider-Man. And of course, I have his hat back there on the chair, but still. Our favorite old ghoul from Gangrene Estates, Theodore Sodcutter. Yeah, he works very well. Even Nosferatu, who I have again loaned his head out back there, works very well. It's actually kind of a neat looking pair right there. And as I shown earlier, if you're into G.I. Joe Classified or any of Hasbro's 6-inch lines, Classified is on the shorter side for 6-inch scale, as I think most of us know by now. But I will say that they still look really good together, and I thought that the Range Viper here would be a good comparison because he's got a skull face. 7-inch figures, it's really not that out of scale. Doc Brown, like we saw earlier, he's the one that I keep wanting to use. You may see him pop up in some of the photography if you look. You know, you could definitely fudge it quite a bit, especially when you put this on the display stand and it automatically kind of makes it appropriate for 7-inch scaled figures. You have things like Super 7 Ultimates and Bachulas a little bit smaller, but you know, it's pretty well right on for something like that. Masters of the Universe Classics? Sure, why not? Let's put it in there. Yep, they're kind of a taller 6-inch scale figure. They're like 6.5 inch, almost 7. Skeletor is a masquerade goer at the ball. Slugfest? Sure, make it happen. Preview for the next review. It kind of looks like these guys are working together, but here's the new Daredevil from Marvel Legends. Definitely kind of small, you know, compared to him. And of course we've got Sun Wukong here from Figura Obscura, and they look really cool together. If you need help defeating the Red Death, maybe we should have called Father Christmas. Are you sure we're in the same line? Oh no. Krampus. Actually look pretty cool together. When all else fails, call Hannibal. He'll take care of business.
Weeping blood comes merely from a derangement of the tear duct. Nothing sinister.
And here's one just for the yucks. We have the Masque of the Red Death version of the Phantom of the Opera from Mego. You tell me which one is better. I thought so. Honestly, when they first revealed this, I thought, well, you know, I'm not really sure what they can do with this concept necessarily. Maybe it's just, you know, a standard figure with some big old flowing robes on. I'm not sure how visually interesting it'll be without a lot of overlay pieces and things. And it's true that it's not quite as ornate as something like Sun Wukong, which was mostly sculpting with just a few fabric elements. And it turned out far, far better than I actually thought it would. You can see that not only is it just absolutely a horrifying figure, especially with the removable mask, and it's really more about the whole thing as a package, this being more of a set than we've seen previously. You have things like that blood trail down there, and you have other things like the clock back there. So there's just a lot to love. I think the Horsemen were acutely aware that there wasn't as much sculpting going into this for the figure itself because it mostly is an accomplishment in soft goods. And with that knowledge, I think they set out looking for inspiration in other parts of the story to see what kind of value they could bring in other ways. And I think they answered that call. These are really nice additions combined with the big diorama section back there that we looked at. There's a lot of play value here as like a set, as a diorama piece. And it wasn't until I saw it all together that I understood just how much that was true. I also think the price isn't that horrible, honestly. I was actually satisfied with what I got for this price because this really is a highly ornate, soft goods dressed figure in this scale. And we know that in this scale, it's a lot of the time it's $100 or more from Mezco. And of course, you know, what Mezco's doing a lot of the times does include more stuff than this has, but there's several releases where that's not the case and it's kind of bare bones. But this is very competitive in that area for quite a bit cheaper. You're looking at $60. And for as crazy as I would have thought I was, if I could have heard myself say this like 5 years ago, it's not a horrible deal in today's economic crisis. I mean climate. Seriously though, it really is a cool figure. I really enjoyed grabbing this guy, and I was kind of taking a gamble on this one because I wasn't immediately sold on it like I am so many of the other things that they put up. But I kind of went on impulse, and I'm really glad I followed that impulse because I think that not only does he stand out on the shelf, but all the cool diorama pieces he comes with have an unbelievable presence on the shelf. And with all that being said, I certainly do hope that you and yours are enjoying this Halloween season. And of course, like and subscribe. And as always, God bless you and yours. And I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out. creepy, man.